Hello guys, welcome back to Datacraftinglab. Trust you're able to learn one or two things in my previous lesson. I really appreciate you all. In this lesson, we'll be discussing the subquery. Now, what is subquery? A subquery is a query nested inside another query, typically used in select, from, or where clauses. Now, the purpose of this subquery is to perform complex filtering, comparison, and calculation based on the result from another query. What I'm trying to say is a subquery is a query inside another query. It's like asking a question that depends on the answer to a smaller question. Now, let me give an instance or a scenario now. Imagine you choosing the best student in a class. You first need to find out the highest score, which is the subquery, and then you check who got that score. That's the main query. Now, if you look at it now, this is what I'm trying to say. Select, let's say student underscore name. From where? Let's say student table. That's student table. Student table. Sorry, from student table. Student. Now, I said our where clause, our select clause is very important in it. Where score, because we want to check for the highest score, where score equals select. Now you want to check the highest, that will be marks. We'll be using our marks. The beginning for marks. That means marks of what? Of score. That means the maximum of the score from where? Students. From students table. Close parentheses and put a semicolon. Now, based on what I said now, we've actually what? The subquery has helped us to make smart decisions by comparing and calculating, also filtering data using answers from what? Another query. Now, with this now, we can determine the what? The highest scores. That's how the subquery actually works. I can't run this now because we don't actually have a what? We don't actually have a student table A. If I run this now, it will actually give us an error. You can see Sakila database student does not exist. Now we have different types of this subquery. We have Scalar query, which returns only one value. We have row subquery, which returns one row. We have table subqueries, which returns a table. We have correlated subquery, which depends on what? Outer query. We will be taking these types one after the other to solve real business scenario questions. Another reason why we use subquery is to avoid entering complex join when unnecessary. Also, to support decision making in reporting and business analysis. Now, let's look at some of the real world. Now, let's take these types one after the other now and solve some real business questions under them. Now, let's start with the Scalar subquery now. Now, based on what I said earlier, I said Scalar subquery returns only a single what? A single value. That means one column or what? One row. Now, let's look at this question under it now. Let's solve this question. This question says, which firm have a rental rate higher than the what? Average rental rate. In this case, we'll be using the Sakila database because it actually has tables that deals with firms and rental and all that. Now, let's highlight this database now. Let's look at our themes table. Let me collapse this. Now, it has theme underscore ID, title, description, release year, language underscore ID, original underscore language ID, renters, and so on. Now we'll create the query inside another query now. Let's select now title, because the question says which theme have a rental rate higher than the average rent. Let's select the title from the table, rental underscore rate. Rental underscore rate. So that's 2. Now from theme table, now where rental rate is greater than, now select, now we will now select, what do we want to actually select now? The average. We're using our average, open parenthesis, rental underscore rate, close parenthesis, from that's the main query, that's the main query from the what? Themes table. Close parenthesis. Now let's run this now. You can see it now. Now, if you look at what we actually have here now, the subquery calculates the average rental rate. The main query then find all the things with what? With rates higher than these values. Now, let's come back to this table. If you look at the rental rate, now the rental rate we have here, we have some rental rates 0.99, 4.99, 2.99, and so on. Now, if you look at it, what we have here now, this has actually calculate what is greater than the what? Than the average rate of the rental rate from this things table. Now, as a data analyst, if you want to make a business decision on this now, this is useful to identify price themes. This can be highlighted in promotional banners or premium collections. Now, for the row subquery now, we said it returns a single row with multiple columns, rarely used, often replaced with what? With joins. Now, let's solve this question. Find the city and country of the customers with the what? Highest total payment. Now, we are solving this question based on this what? Row subquery now. Now, let's see the customers table now. This is the customers table. Now, let's see payments table. This is payments table. Let's see. Okay, let's see this address table. Now, this has city underscore ID. Now, the question says find the city and country of the customers with highest paying. So we'll be using the payments table along with the customers table and the address so that we can use it to get the cities and the country. Now let's select city comma, country, from address, where address underscore id, open parenthesis, underscore id is equals to select address underscore id from customers table, now where customer underscore id or customer underscore, let me use customer underscore id, let's pick this customer underscore id. Now we are creating another subquery again, open parenthesis, select customer underscore id from which table? From payments, now group by, let's group it by customer underscore id. Let's order it by, that's sort by, order by what? Let's sum open parenthesis. What do we actually want to sum? We'll sum the amount, that's from the payments table, close parenthesis. Let's put this in descending order. Let me leave it in this. Let's limit it to 2, or let's see 2 first. 1, 2. Put my semicolon here, hit on enter. Unknown colon city in field. Okay. Now when you come across this kind of error, this is how to read. When you have an error, this is how to read it. So you can see what it states here now, that what unknown column is what is city in field list. Now I'll tell you how to solve this. Now if you look at the address table, we don't have city there. We don't have city directly, and we don't have country. So now this is how we will solve this error now. But we have cities table. These are cities table. These are city. This is what we have there. We have city underscore id, we have country underscore id. Now we have country. Look at country. We have country underscore id, country, and last underscore update. Now we will make use of all these tables and we will join them together. Now let's bring this as what? Let's say ci dot, that means, sorry, let me just use ci dot city, that means we pick city from what? Cities table. Now let's say we pick this co from what? We pick country from countries table. Now we will now, from where? From customer cu, that's from customers table. We represent the customers table with cu. Now let's join now. Let's join address address, which is, let's represent it as A, on what? On cu dot address underscore id, this column, equals address, that's address table, address underscore id. Now I joined what? Address underscore id. That means what is common to what? These two tables, customers table and address table. This is address. This is address. Address has address underscore id, and customer also has what? Address underscore id. So we've actually made use of this address underscore id to what? Actually join the two tables together. Now let's continue. Let's join again. Join city. Let's join city this time around. City, that's the CI. Don't forget. On what? On address dot city underscore id. City underscore id equals city dot city underscore id. Equals city underscore id. So we pick the what? The city underscore id join cities table and what? Address table. Let's confirm it now. You can see now in the address has what? City underscore id. Now this is cities table. It also has what? City underscore id. Let's continue. Now the next thing we'll be joining is we'll join country, that's the CO. What are we joining it on? CI dot country underscore id. Okay, let's bring it up for us. That's what is actually common to both of them. Equals CO, that's the country. Don't forget. Country underscore id. Now, where CU, that's the customers table, customer underscore id, this column, equals open parenthesis. Now select what are we now selecting now? We will now we want to select our customer ID, customer underscore ID. From where? From which table? We'll select this customer underscore ID from this payments table. You can see it here now. Payments table. Payment. Now let's group it by customer underscore ID. Group by customer underscore ID. Customer underscore ID. Let's order it by some open parenthesis amount close parenthesis. We want it in descending. Let's leave it descending. Let's limit it to limit it to, let's say, 1 or 2. You can limit it to anything you actually want. Now, let's close parentheses now. Let me delete what we actually have here before. Now, let me go up. Okay, I think we are fine. Let's run this now. You can see now. So we actually have everything completely now. Now let's limit it to, let's say, 3. Let's run this now. Don't forget, in our definition, we said returns what? A single row, but with a what? Multiple columns. You can see it now. We decided to run this now. We decided to limit it to, let's say, like 2 or 3 now. Let's say 2. It will give us error. You see now, subquery returns more than 1 row. That's the meaning. If we return it back to 1 now, you can see it now. City and country. Now the question says find the city and country of the what? Of the customers with highest total payment. Now we've actually get the customer with what? Highest total payment. This is the city, Cora, and the country is what? United States. Now, as an analyst now, a business insight on this now, that means a business decision on this now. This give you the what? The location, that's the city and the country of your what? Of your most valuable customer. That is good for what? Personal recognition. Also what? Targeted for advertising or region-based strategy. Now, let's solve this question on the screen now. This question says, country have the same population and GMP values as a specific reference like Nigeria. The question is referencing Nigeria. That means we have to determine their what? Their GMP and population values. Now, let's solve it now. In this scenario now, we'll be using our word database because it actually has population and also the word GMP, that's gross national product. Now, let's get started. We'll be using, okay, it has been highlighted. The word database has been highlighted. Now, let's select. Let's use this country table. You can see it has population and all, GMP, everything. Now, let's select. Sorry, let's come back here. Select. Let's select name. Let's bring out the name of the country. Let's bring out name, population. Now GMP. Now from where? From country. Sorry. From country, let's leave it the way it is because it's case sensitive. Where population equals open parentheses. Now select. Let's create the subquery first. Population. Sorry. Population. Now this is it. From, don't forget, from which table? Countries table. Where name of the country we actually want to use equals, in quotes, single quotes, Nigeria. Now close parentheses. and the GMP. We will have to bring out the value for the GMP and the population, and also the name. And GMP equals open parentheses. Now let's select select GMP from countries table where name equals Nigeria close parenthesis semicolon. Now let's run this now. Now you can see what we have now. We've actually bring out the what? The name. That's for the what? That's for the country. Then we can see now under the name we have Nigeria. Population. This is the population, and this is their what? GMP. And this query searches the countries table in the world database for countries that have what? Both the same population as Nigeria, same gross national product as Nigeria, and it does this by using what? Two subqueries. The first subquery retrieves the Nigerian's population. The second subquery retrieves what? Nigerian GMP. The main query then check for what? Country that match both values. Now, for instance, now, if Nigerian population says, let's say 120 million, and the GMP is what? $42 billion. The query returns all the countries with those exact same figures. That's what the subquery actually what does. Now, as an analyst now, if you are to make a business decision on this now, we understanding the countries with what? Similar economic what? Size, that's the GMP, and market size, that's the population, to Nigeria helps businesses and government make strategic what? Decisions such as what? Market expansion, risk analysis, policy benchmarking, investment planning, and all. That's how to make a what? Business decision when it comes to this kind of scenario. Move to the next one is table subquery. See one more example under this now. Now let's select let's say title, comma, let's say rent underscore count. That's the name of the temporary table we actually want to create, rent underscore count. Now from open parentheses, let's select now theme. Let's bring out title from theme, comma, now count open parentheses. Now we'll be using renters table. Let me leave a small letter, renters table. What I want to put from renters table, rent underscore ID. You can select the rent, this is the renters table, close parentheses, as renter count underscore count. Now from theme, as let's leave it as F, from themes table. Now let's join let's say inventory table as I. Now on theme underscore ID, that's from the themes table. You can see it has actually bring out the column for us, equals now inventory Film underscore ID. This is what is actually common to the two table, inventory table and what? Films table. Now join, I want to join again. Join rentals table, that's R, on let's say inventory underscore ID, equals R, that's the rentals table. What are we picking from there? That's inventory underscore ID. That's what is common to rentals table and what? Inventory table. Now let's group it by film underscore ID from films table. Let's close parentheses as what? As film underscore rentals. We've actually made use of our films and what? Rentals table along with the what? Inventory table. Film underscore rentals. Now where, let's use our where clause. Where, let's say rental count, that's the table. Rental count, rental underscore count is less than, open parentheses, less than, select. Now what are we selecting? Average, open parentheses, rental underscore count, parentheses. That means we actually want to get the average of this rental count. Now from where? From open parentheses, select. Now film underscore ID, comma. Now count, open parentheses. Now rental, that's the rentals table, rental underscore ID, this is it here. Close parentheses as what? As rentals count. We are still linking it together from film table. Now from film table, join inventory, that's the I, on film underscore ID, equals inventory table. So what is common to both of them? Film underscore ID. Now join rental. Now on what? On inventory table. On inventory table with what? With the rentals table. Because we make use of them in the what? in the temporary table we actually created earlier, inventory. Now let's group it by group by theme underscore id. Now let's close parentheses as what. Now all these things we've written as what, as all theme, all underscore themes. Now the first in temporary table and the second one, so we'll close it now. Close it. Let's run this now. You can see it now. It may be looking confusing when I was doing it, but it's very simple. Now we actually use two derived tables, one for all films renters and one for what? The average, and what? And filter below average performance. That's what we actually do here. If I want to make a decision on this now, I've actually identified themes that may need to what? To be removed from what? Inventory or repackaged into deals. Now, this question says, which customer have made more payment than the average of all customers? That means all customers as a whole, the average of them, which customer actually made more payment than them as a whole. Now, we'll be using the customers what? We'll be using the payments table. Now, because of the what the question says. Now, let's select. What do we actually want to select? Let's select the customer ID, customer underscore ID. Now, we are still on the Sakila database. Now, what do we actually want to select? Select count. Now, open parentheses. We want to count all. Close parentheses. From where? Payment table. Let's say P2. Where P2 where P2 dot customer underscore ID equals, I want to make use of two payments table. So in that case, I will be creating, okay, I'll use the first one as first payment table and second payment table. Now this one will now be P1 dot customer underscore ID as total underscore payment. From payments table. Which of the payment table? P1 is giving us red sign there. Let me see where the error is. Count from payment. Now, let me close parentheses here. Okay. So payments table 1, let's group by customer underscore ID, customer underscore customer underscore ID. Now we'll make use of our having clause. Having, there's one of the video we actually talk about the having clause, so you can watch the video and get more explanation on having clause. Underscore payment, total underscore payment greater than 1. Sorry, greater than, let me open under parenthesis, select average. Now the average, what the question says now, let me leave it in capital letter, average, open parenthesis. Now the total, the question says the total average of what? All customer. Now we'll get the total, we'll now get the average. Now close parenthesis, from open parenthesis. Now select customer underscore ID, customer underscore ID, count, open parenthesis, close the bracket, close parenthesis, as what? As total, from where? From payment table. Now group by customer underscore ID, group by customer underscore ID, close parenthesis, as customer underscore, let's say underscore total. Now let's close parenthesis, let's put semicolon, semicolon. Let's run this now. Quick one now. This subquery actually compares each customer's total payment count to the average across all customers. Now, if I'm to make decision on this now, I've actually identified customers more engaged with the what? With the service. Ideal for what? Upselling. Now, that's what this query has helped us to what? Has helped us to do. Now, this will be the last example we'll actually be doing. Now, this is under, I think this is under correlated subquery. Okay. Now, that's all. That will be all for this lesson after this second example now. Now, this question says list customers who spent more than the average amount spent by what? Customers in the same city. Now, in this case now, we'll be using the customers table along with the payments table and the address table to actually solve this question. Now, let's select. What are we selecting? Let's pick the customers table. Now, what are we picking from the customers table? Customer underscore ID. Customer underscore ID. Now, from the customers table, we'll be picking the first name, first underscore name, comma, last underscore name, still under the customers table, last underscore name, last underscore name, comma, address, that's the city underscore ID, comma. Now, let's sum this. Let's use the window function sum, open parenthesis. Now, payments. I want to use the amount from payments table. payments table, close parenthesis, as total underscore spent. From where? Sorry, from customer, now join payment, that's on what? On now customer, that's the customer table, customer underscore ID equals payment dot customer underscore ID join address, that's the address table now. Now let's represent it as A on customer dot address underscore ID equals address table. Now what am I picking from there? Address underscore ID colon. Now I would group this, or let me leave it here. Group by customer table. What am I picking from there? Customer underscore ID. Now having some open parenthesis. Now that's the payments table. What am I picking from there? The amount, close parenthesis, greater, open parenthesis. Now select average, open parenthesis, city underscore total. Let me leave it. Okay, city underscore total. I want it this way. Underscore total, close parenthesis, from open parenthesis, which from where? Select let's sum, select sum, open parenthesis. Now the P2, now the second payment, P2 dot amount, we want to represent parenthesis as city underscore total, from open parenthesis. Now select sum, open parenthesis. That now let's work on the second payment dot amount. Now close this now as what? As city underscore total. Now from where? From customers table. That will be customers 2 now. Customers 2 Let me use customers 2. Now let's join those. Let's join payment P2 on now C2. What's common to both of them? Customer underscore ID, customer underscore ID equals P2, that's the second payment table, dot customer underscore ID. Now let's join again the address table. Now we are joining the address table this time around. Join address A2 on A2 on second address table, that's C2. Okay, let me use small letter C2 dot address underscore ID equals A2 dot address underscore ID. That's what is common to both of them. Now let's say where A2, that's the second address table, what are we picking from there? City underscore ID equals the original table, that's the address table, dot city underscore ID. So we've actually linked the temporary and the what permanent tables together. Group by now customer 2 dot customer underscore ID close parenthesis as city underscore start close parenthesis semicolon. Let's run this now. There's error. Every derived table must. Now the error says every derived table must have its own alias. Now let's do it like this. Customer underscore ID, comma. Now this is how to solve this if we have this kind of error. Now let's correct it now. Let's group it by the first name, comma, first name. Now the last name, last underscore name. Now comma, address. Let's pick out the city underscore ID. Now having some payment amount now greater than average, let's say customer underscore total. Now from where, because we actually pick all these ones, we actually group it by the what, by this table now, this customers table and the address table. Now from select sum. Now let's select this customer table 2. What are we picking from there? Customer ID, comma, some as what? As customer, because the error says every what table we derive must have what? Its own what? Alias, customer underscore total. From where now? From this one will now be from C2, okay, customer table C2. Now let's now join. Let's delete this now. We've actually solved that. Now let's now join payment 2 on customer 2. Okay, this is correct. Address A2, what's common? Address underscore ID. Okay. Now where A2, that's the second address, that's city underscore ID, and the normal address table, we'll now group it by C2, customer underscore ID, as what? Now let's pick this as, let's say, city underscore customer underscore total. You can actually use anything you underscore total. Now let's run this now. Control enter. You can see now it's actually correct. So if you have error, you read the error. When you run a query, you read that error and you use it to what? Determine where the problem lies. Now with what we have here now, the main query, that's the main query here now, has actually what? Calculate how much each customer has spent. That's the main query. Now, and the subqueries has calculate the average spending per customer in what? In that same city. And the having clause that we make use of it now has actually filters out the customers who spent more than that city's average. Now, if you want to make a business, if I'm to make a business decision on this now, from this result, from this results, sorry, I can identify what top performing what customers per city, and I can what personalize marketing strategy for them, design a reward program to retain them, and analyze what makes certain customers spend more. So from the question now, the question says list customers who spent more than the average amount spent by customers in the same city. Sorry. Now we've used the join to connect the customers' addresses and what payments table. That's the three table I actually make use of. And the subquery in the having clause that calculates the average customer spending in each city, and also a correlated reference. That's that's address city underscore ID to filter customers based on their own city spending data. That will be all for this lesson. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, click on the notification bell. When I drop a new video, you get notified. See you in the next lesson. Bye for now.